I thought this was just another roguelite. Same formula, same structure, probably the same experience you've had 20 times before. I was completely wrong. Cinderia is one of the most insane action roguelites out there, and if you skip it because it looks generic at first glance, you're making a huge mistake. Because this game does something most roguelites completely fail at. It makes you feel powerful without making you feel safe. Every run is chaos. Pure, exhilarating chaos, where you're chaining skills together in ways that shouldn't work but absolutely do, and the whole time you're on the edge of death, wondering how you're still alive. The art style is stunning. It's not pixel art, but it has this gorgeous illustrated look that takes heavy inspiration from Cult of the Lamb. Dark fairy tale aesthetic with this haunting beauty to it. The world is corrupted, everything's burning and falling apart, but it's rendered in this way that makes the devastation feel almost enchanting. It's a ruined world, but it's a beautiful ruin. The premise is simple. A witch burned everything. You can absorb the corruption without losing your mind. You're fighting through the wreckage. That's all you need to know because you're here for the combat, not extended lore dumps. Here's how it works. 4 playable characters, and they're not just palette swaps with minor stat differences. These characters play completely differently from each other. The first character is basically a close-range assassin. Fast, aggressive, built around getting in your face and decimating enemies before they can react. The second character is all about ranged attacks. Completely different rhythm, completely different approach to encounters. You're keeping distance, managing positioning, thinking about angles and spacing in ways the melee character never has to consider. And each character has access to their own pool of over 180 skills. Skills that are unique to them, abilities that synergize with their playstyle, options that completely change how you approach the game. And you can freely combine everything: skills, combos, passive abilities, equipment. No restrictions, no class limitations, just pure build experimentation, where you're constantly discovering combinations that feel broken until you realize the game is designed around you being broken. The variety this creates is insane. Playing the assassin character versus the ranged character isn't just a different experience, it's almost like playing a different game. The skills you prioritize, the equipment you look for, the way you move through rooms, the combos you build toward, all of it changes based on who you're playing. And then you factor in the other 2 characters, who have their own completely distinct approaches, and you're looking at potentially hundreds of hours of content, just from experimenting with different character and build combinations. That's the key. Most roguelites give you power progression, but keep you relatively balanced. This game lets you become absolutely ridiculous, and then throws enemies at you that force you to use every bit of that power just to survive. The difficulty scales with your strength, so you never feel overpowered for long, but you always feel like you're doing something incredible. And the skill fusion system is what makes this work. You're not just collecting skills and using them separately. You're combining them with spell cards and embers that completely change how they function. The same base skill can become 10 different things depending on what you fuse it with. Every run plays differently, not because you got different random drops, but because you're actively building something unique based on what you find and how you decide to combine it. That creates this constant decision making that most roguelites don't have. It's not just do you take the damage upgrade or the defense upgrade. It's if you fuse this skill with this ember, you can chain it into this combo, but only if you also have this equipment piece. And if you commit to that build, you need to find this other thing to make it work, or you're going to get destroyed in the next area. You're building your fighting style in real time, and every decision matters, because one wrong choice can brick your entire run or open up possibilities you didn't even know existed. The equipment system compounds this. Over 130 pieces of gear with countless combinations. And they're not just stat sticks. They change how your skills work, how your combos flow, what your optimal rhythm is. Finding the right equipment can transform a mediocre build into something genuinely unstoppable. Missing a key piece can leave you struggling to survive encounters that should be easy. And the game knows this. It's designed around the fact that sometimes RNG is going to give you everything you need to create a god build, and sometimes it's going to give you garbage and force you to improvise. Both scenarios are equally interesting because one lets you experience the high of being unkillable, and the other forces you to get creative and figure out how to survive with suboptimal resources. The combat itself feels incredible. Fast, responsive, brutal. But how it feels changes dramatically depending on who you're playing. With the assassin, you're constantly in motion, closing gaps, getting inside enemy attack ranges and shredding them before they can respond. Every fight is about aggression and momentum, With the ranged character, you're managing space, keeping enemies at optimal distance, repositioning constantly to maintain angles. Same game, completely different combat flow. You're constantly moving, dodging, chaining attacks together, looking for openings. Enemies hit hard enough that you can't just face tank damage even with good builds. Positioning matters. Timing matters. Understanding when to commit to a combo and when to back off and reset matters. And all of these things matter differently depending on which character you're playing and what build you've created for them. Boss fights especially are genuinely difficult with really interesting design. They're not unfair, but they're relentless. Pattern recognition is important, but so is adaptation, because these fights will punish you for getting comfortable. You need to be aggressive without being reckless, defensive without being passive. That balance is what makes victories feel earned rather than lucky. And when you die, and you will die frequently, you return to your base camp. This is where the meta progression happens. You're spending resources to unlock permanent upgrades, making yourself stronger for the next run. But here's where it gets interesting. During your runs, you'll encounter NPCs scattered through the ruins. Save them, and they return to your camp. Some of these characters will sell you equipment. Others provide support abilities that give you new tactical options. But the most exciting ones become playable characters. Remember those 4 distinct characters I mentioned? You don't start with all of them. You unlock them by finding and rescuing specific NPCs during your runs. Which means your first few runs might be with the assassin. But then you rescue someone who becomes the ranged character, and suddenly you have access to a completely different playstyle with 180 new skills to experiment with. Then you unlock the 3rd character, then the 4th, and each time your options for how to approach the game exponentially expand. That loop of venturing out, finding survivors, bringing them back to strengthen your camp, unlocking new playable characters with entirely different skill pools, then heading out stronger with new options keeps the progression feeling meaningful. You're not just grinding numbers. You're actively building up your base and expanding what's possible in future runs in fundamental ways. Random events and room types keep the exploration fresh. Every run takes a different route through the ruins. You're finding new areas, discovering new encounters, making choices in events that can dramatically change your run. The world feels like it has secrets to discover, rather than just being a series of combat arenas connected by hallways. The game launches in early access this March, with the full release planned before the end of the year. The developers are actively expanding it with continuous updates, adding more content and depth to systems that are already incredibly deep. And here's what seals it. The dark fairy tale aesthetic is genuinely beautiful. That haunting, corrupted world, rendered in this Cult of the Lamb-inspired style, just works. It's not trying to be everything to everyone. It knows exactly what it is. Fast, brutal action with deep build customization and combat that demands your full attention. No fluff, no unnecessary systems tacked on. Just pure adrenaline designed to make you feel like a badass while barely surviving. If you like roguelites, if you like fast combat and build experimentation, play Cinderia when it launches in March. Don't scroll past it like I almost did.